Good morning, folks. Rick Spain here with Infinite Grace Ministries with another thought to think about, and hopefully it's going to help you because that is why we're here. Special thanks to Philip Reed and Reed newspapers, which cover a big portion of Oklahoma. So if you don't have the paper, get the paper. But anyway, I was thinking about when I was in school. And one of the big excitements for me in school was not necessarily the schoolwork, but the competitions that were in the school, and especially in the athletic field. And being mostly in rural communities, I was in all the sports. Believe it or not, I even did tennis for a while. But the one of the sports that I really liked was track and field. And so in track and field, being a short-legged person, I was not the one you would expect to do hurdles or high jumps or long distance runs, but I was pretty good at those short distance. Matter of fact, I won a lot of medals in that short distance. But it was interesting because there'd be a process. You'd get to the track meet and you'd have three different legs if you were good enough. So the first leg would be preliminaries, and you would run this race. And if you were in a position, a place, or had a certain time, you'd go on to the next round, which was semifinals. And then you would compete again. And once again, you'd have to be one or two or have a qualifying time. And so then you would get to the finals. And that is where you were considered qualified. So, that's what I want to talk about today is the question, are you qualified? Hmm. Are you qualified? This challenge is one that we all face. Sometimes it is simply getting up in the morning, and sometimes it's in your next breath. The challenge is always present, whether it's in the simple activities in life or the most difficult of circumstances. So, the question, are you qualified? So, this question is not difficult in the normal activities of life. Of course, you can get up in the morning because you've conquered the question all your life. The question builds significance when you face the difficulty that you've never faced. This is where the question becomes internal. You search for the answers that are beyond your perceived ability, and the answers seem to be just out of your reach. Are you qualified? This is a question that cries for resolution. The battle is not really in your physical or mental abilities, it is in the perception of those abilities. This is important to understand, guys. So, because the 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 deal is you have a can do and you have a can't do, and they're all on the inside of you. You got a measuring table on the inside of you. So your potential is not truly uncovered in your natural abilities, it's uncovered in the perception of those abilities. When the thought is geared towards what you've done over and over again, the thought engages the trigger that produces the energy. And what happens when the trigger's pulled? The natural abilities kick in, and you do what you've always done, and you overcome the obstacle. So then you determine, I am qualified to do this. So we all know we're qualified to get up in the morning. Praise God. So the real challenge is not in the easy times. Remember that. The real challenge is in the unknown oppositions. When you look for the answer, and the only answer you can find is right in the middle of the person you're looking at in that mirror. Now, that's not a very pleasant thought sometimes. But on the other hand, when you start recognizing what you can do and you start recognizing that this obstacle can be overcome, then it becomes more of a I've got the solution. I've made it past qualifying. I'm going on to the semis, and I'm competing for the finals. So, how you answer this question determines your stature in life. Are you qualified? How you answer this question determines your stature in life. So, what do I mean by that? If you ignore the challenge or dismiss it, your identity will be under the circumstances. So, what does this mean? What this means is that when you are challenged and you continue to fall short of that challenge, not necessarily because of what you can do, but because of the thought that, man, I don't know if I can make it, and so the thought puts you what I call under the circumstances. And so therefore what happens is you get this right or this privilege because you're breathing air, I guess, and I breathe air because I've done it too. So then we get the thought that, you know what, it's, I can't overcome this because of this person. If this person would change, then I could overcome it. Or the circumstances. If the circumstances would change, then I would be happy. So happy is never truly based upon what goes on around you. I said that. I know I talk slow naturally, but I said that slow for a reason, because this is one of our common expressions. I'll be happy when this is over. I'll be happy when this person leaves me alone. I'll be happy when I get this bill paid. And then what happens? You might be happy for a second, but man, something else replaces it. Why? Because it is challenging whether you're qualified. And so the problem is never the problem until you think it is a problem. Think about that for a second. This is where the question hits you right in the center of your being, and the potential in your being is measured. So to see a problem is one thing. To recognize the size of a problem is the real challenge. Easter morning. That was yesterday. For those that are listening at a later time, for me, it was yesterday. And so we have, obviously we have a church. We got a church we go to every week. And because we go to this church every week and we're involved in this church, we've got responsibilities that we have to take care of. And so not because we have to, but because it's just something that, makes you feel good, and you're doing the right thing, and maybe you're making God smile. And that's a good thing, right? So Saturday night, we know that what's going to happen the next day. We're going to have extra service. It's going to be an hour earlier in the morning. And so what that means, we have to be there 30 minutes early because we're involved. So we all know this. And so we get up Sunday morning and everybody's getting ready, getting busy. And my concept of being 30 minutes early and my wife's concept are two different things. She thinks we've got to leave an hour earlier than we need to in order to get there to be 30 minutes early, which in reality we're about an hour earlier. So my idea is, you know what, it doesn't bother me to be just right on time. Can I get a witness, Sarah? She's nodding her head. Yeah, because I'm not one about being too early. I don't want to put extra responsibility on anyone. And by golly, when do I have to be there? When I'm supposed to be there. So anyway, so all these thoughts are going in, and Heather, my wife, is pushing me and the kids, my son and my two grandkids living with us, and pushing us. We got to get going. So I'm going over this what I'm talking to you about this morning, and adding some stuff to it, and reviewing, and in the meantime, just a side thought. I'm thinking, man, I hope this makes sense. Is this really going to help anybody? Well, you are the qualifier in this. I hope it helps you. So anyway, I'm getting frustrated. So finally I get out in the vehicle and we pull out of the drive and we're driving along. And we've got a little bridge about a mile south of our house. We live 8 miles north of Weatherford at the city limits of Weatherford. So it's about a 15-minute, 20-minute drive. Well, we're going to church in Hydro, which is a different story, but we still cross this bridge. Pardon me. So Heather, is giving me the rules and all the regulations of why we should be there, leaving at this time, and I'm kind of listening and kind of frustrated because you know what, I had some important things to do, and that included you. I want to include you in this thought, that way, I get a more justification in what I'm about to tell you. So anyway, she's looking at me, and right before this bridge, a deer jumps out. Oh boy! And so that deer was bound and determined to impede on the course of a woman that has an agenda and she has a place to be. She was looking at me. I saw the deer, and I raised my voice to a higher level. Honey, bam! We hit the deer. Poor thing. I don't think it survived very long after that. Right in the middle. I mean, just knocked all that stuff out of it. Yeah. So anyway, at that moment, I began to raise my voice because you know why, I'm already frustrated. Not only this stuff here, but I've got other stuff that I'm dealing with, and it's just frustration building, frustration building, frustration building. It all came out at that point. Why in the world are you not paying attention? Now, I am not. Only because I want to help you, I'm going to tell you that the volume that I said that was way louder. And so, and I'm just throwing a fit, hollering, and man, Heather breaks down, boo-hooing, just tears flowing. And so I get out to look at the car, and it's cratered in the middle, and so I hear some psst, something coming out. So I'm thinking, we might be losing fluid. And I'm thinking, we got to get this car back to the house before, we have to tow it. And so I'm once again with the elevated volume telling everybody, come on, get in the car. We got to get this thing to the house. And Heather's boo-hooing, and I'm feeling a little bit bad, but I'm thinking I got to get this car home. So I get it on home, and then I get to think about what I did. Wow. Are you qualified? I'm going to go back to this thought. A problem's not a problem until you think it's a problem. In hindsight, I look back and I think, well, I probably did not need to raise the volume of my voice, because you know what? That deer did jump out, almost out of a concealed place. And yes, I saw it before we hit it, and she did too as we hit it. But, it just jumped out. That what can you do about that? There's not much you can do about it. So the question being, was Heather qualified to drive that car? Well, in reality, folks, she's had fewer fender benders than I have. And in reality, she's probably had fewer traffic violations than I have. And so if we measure from the past, yeah, I think she's qualified, and so was she paying attention at that moment? Well, no, but when I'm driving a vehicle, I'm looking around me more than I'm looking in front of me. You know why? Because I love God's nature. We were in Colorado this last week, and it was like, wow, I love the mountains, and seeing all the beauty. Obviously I wasn't driving, and thank the Lord for that, because we did see a lot of deer. But, I want to go over some thoughts with you about finding your qualifications. So, first point I want to make is, how do you measure a problem? How do you measure it? Because not all problems have the same size. So think about it. You get up in the morning and you got all your stuff together, and if you're like most people, where are you heading? You're heading to school, or you're heading to work, or you're heading to do something. And so you get all your stuff together, you get in the car, and you go to start the car, and what happens? You forgot the keys. Dang it. Isn't that irritating? And you know what? It seems like a really big problem. And so you run in the house and you come back out, and about short time, you put the key in the ignition, or however it starts, and you move on. And so you carry that thing like it's a big problem, but in reality, that's a little problem. And so one of the issues in discovering your potential or your qualification is in determining the size of your problem. So you got that. Then you go on to the time factor. So some problems can be solved in a matter of seconds, some problems in a matter of an hour, some may take a day, some a week, so on and so forth. You go a month, year, 10 years. How you measure that problem, how long is it going to take you to solve it? Then you determine whether this problem is a big problem or a little problem. And so a lot of the problems that we encounter in life become big problems because we either focus on it too much or we ignore it. And neither one of those are a good application on determining the size of your problems. So when you determine the size of your problem, then you can go on to step two. And step two is where what I call unleashing your potential. Because when we're talking about qualification, what we're talking about is, what is your potential? Do you have a potential to survive? Do you have a potential to overcome? And if you don't, then you better go do some negotiating, right? So anyway, unleashing your potential. So the number one thing you do in unleashing your potential, always remember, do what you can. Do what you can. Because if you don't remember that, what you tend to focus on is what you can't do. And so I've learned this in life, that if you over focus on your can't do, then it hinders the potential of what you can do. And so remember, do what you can. Second thing you do is you remember that. Yeah, and I learned this from a preacher back in the 80s. He's about 85 years old, so he had a lot of wisdom, and I'll never forget it from this day. I remember him saying this, and I thought, and the quote was, "Things are usually not as bad as they seem." And so when we start over focusing on the problem, what that does is that minimizes your potential and your qualifications, because what happens is you either think, I'm not going to measure up, or I might as well just give up. You got to go back to step one, do what you can. But remember, things are never as bad as they seem. Never as bad as they seem. So number three is, you got to dig a little bit deeper. And what does that mean? There's how a person grows is by opposition, trouble, trial, uh, whatever the issue may be. It is pushing you past where you've been before. And so if you don't push past where you've been before, you're always going to be the same, and you're never going to increase, and your potential is going to be minimized, and your qualification is going to be somewhere in the average or maybe below average. How about that? I don't like that. I like being above average. So you got to dig a little bit deeper, because there's something in you that you don't even know that you have. And what you got to do, you have to pull it out. So the fourth thing you do in this and unleashing your potential is don't give up. It's so interesting. It reminds me of the fable, the tortoise and the hare. That the tortoise was obviously more gifted in the race and more had more ability, but the tortoise had something that the rabbit didn't have, and it did not give up. And we know how the story ends. The turtle wins the race, and everybody's saying, wow, unbelievable. And if you will just keep on going, just keep on doing what you know to do, don't give up, you'll find that in the end you're going to achieve something you never dreamed that was possible. So I want to go into one more thought here. Your qualifications are not determined by what goes on around you. How are they determined? By what goes on in you. So there's three things I want to bring out in this. And this is where we're going to bring God into the equation like he never was in it. He's always in the equation. But number one, you got to pay attention to what he says. Because when you pay attention to what he says, that sets your mind right. So a lot of our concepts, and we've talked about this in earlier videos, is we have concept that God is waiting for us to mess up just so he can hit us with his big stick in the sky, or whatever you want to call it. But in reality, he's behind you more than your mama or your daddy. He wants you to succeed. And so if you will pay attention to what he says, he will set your mind on the right course so that you can pursue that dream that he put in your heart. So pay attention to what he says. Don't be conformed to what this world and its surrounding has to say, but be conformed to what he said. And that will bring a transformation to your life so that you will know what his purpose for you is. And that's a paraphrase out of Romans 12. And so pay attention to what he said. The second thing you do is you use your words to benefit and not take away. Because in Proverbs it says the power of life and death are in the words that come out of your mouth. And so when you start setting your mind right, then you start speaking right. And the final point is then you will start receiving what he says. And you know what? I think about that one of the scriptures, he's able to do exceeding abundantly above all that you ask or think. And a lot of people leave this out, but it's so important. But it says, according to the power that he placed in you. Are you qualified? Well, I don't know. And maybe you don't know. But if you'll follow these principles, I can tell you that you're going to get more than you ever dreamed. Have a great day.